Good morning, LinkedIn and YouTube. Welcome to today's production called Pick Your Brains with Benjamin, i.e. yours truly. And we're going to talk today with my guest, Dan Frandenberg. So here's a little about Dan. Dan's from Ottawa, Canada. He's a commercial real estate investor and he's a funnel master. And he does a lot of other stuff in technology. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Dan Frandenberg.
That's Fradenberg, by the way. You got
Fradenberg.
in there, yeah, Fradenberg, but yeah, that's all good. Yeah, it's I'm good. I'm just glad to be here and talking to you today, there, Benjamin.
My first question to you is, before you forayed into commercial real estate investing and before you started funneling and a lot of this other stuff that definitely are interests of mine, what was your work history up to this point?
Sure. So first, it was working sound and lights for some different academic institutions, and then I was a guitar teacher. And then I did some of that while I studied electrical engineering, but then there were some huge layoffs near the end of my electrical engineering. So I ended up taking a huge chance and moving to Taiwan, teaching some English there, and then coming back. And that's when I got into e-commerce. But my time in Taiwan, I also did some work as a translator from Mandarin for a few different companies and entities. And so it's a really, really weird mix of different work experience that I have.
That's actually interesting. And I would have, believe it or not, imagined because you studied electrical engineering, it probably gave you a little bit more of an adaptable mindset. People who went into electrical engineering had, kind of different things you could do with it. Like, I'm guessing some people could go into tech and become web developers would be one path. It had numerous possibilities, if I'm correct, right?
Well, here's the thing. So you got two different main things that I want to comment on. One is there's a habit that colleges, specifically universities, if you use the Canadian terminology, there's one habit that they have with like physicians and engineers and whatnot, which is that because these super duper smart people studied those things, they tend to take credit for it. It's like, well, it's because of what we taught them or what they know or something like that, when that's actually putting the cart before the horse, so to speak. So like many engineers and doctors, lawyers, stuff like that, they're super duper smart people. They'd be super duper smart regardless of what they did. But electrical engineering,
right,
if you're in an actual university, it's far more complex than just like web development and things like that, because that's the sort of thing you can get at a community college. But electrical engineering, it's like how the actual servers work, how the actual computers work, how you actually build custom chips to control all that stuff. So I was originally told to go into electrical engineering as a way to make music work. I told my guidance counselor that I never wanted to pawn my music equipment. And so they recommended, go into electrical engineering, which is a very difficult solution for a very simple problem. But what can you do?
You were passionate about music is what you're saying. So that's understandable, because if I note how the music industry works, there is a need for electrical engineers, which eventually leads into production, right? Or like music production.
Yeah. It's all the recording equipment is all electronic. So the electronic engineers would be the ones who design the boards and effects and software and whatever to make all that stuff happen.
When you finally decided that you wanted to do what you're doing now, what led you onto platforms like LinkedIn, which, was originally, I remember back in, very early 2004, I was told to use this during my college career. But then, between us in the last decade, it sort of tried to brand itself as Instagram for business, which I'm going to be honest, there's two separate uses for. I'm sure you and I can both agree. LinkedIn is a great platform, but I think the original meaning got lost in trying to compete with Instagram. Instagram and Facebook are its own unique brands.
Yeah, there's a lot to it. I know that one of the other issues, it's the algorithm itself. And to explain LinkedIn's algorithm, I need to talk about Reddit, because I think it's even more obvious. So Reddit is very talented at putting you in a sandbox. In other words, whatever your habits are, it'll give you more of that and less of everything else. And so one person's experience on a platform like LinkedIn will be different from another person's. So me personally, I'm constantly engaging with commercial real estate investors. And because of that, all I see in my feed when I'm looking at them is, oh, this is the deal we're closing. Hey, this is what's going on with inflation. Hey, these are some neat tricks we've got for like seller financing, different things like that. They're a lot more applicable. But another problem is that a lot of people, they just don't know what to post. So they're like, okay, so do I show that I'm living the life? And so they get that kind of Instagram feel. That's definitely it. But the reason why I choose LinkedIn, which was your original question, is because of why people are on the platform. Okay, so LinkedIn, people hop onto LinkedIn because they want to find more people to do business with. They want to make referrals so that maybe they can get referrals. It's just a very open and business-minded platform. And of course, because you got enough people, you got some people who want to make it into Facebook and make it about politics and viruses and all that sort of stuff.
One thing I want to say about that, because I actually completely agree with you. Media is a very powerful tool. Media is a very powerful tool. I mean, one thing off topic, in the early 2 years that I spent more on LinkedIn than I did in the past, I was getting a lot of, believe it or not, this is for the viewers, I was getting a lot of annoying spam inbox email. Do you want to invest in Forex? Do you want to look, have you considered e-com or cryptocurrency? One thing, I don't know if you will agree with me on this or not. I think we need to stop making the assumption because somebody's in their 30s that, they have a stable income, because what has the coronavirus taught us? Everything is temporary. Would you agree or disagree?
Yeah, definitely. That's one of my biggest things about why I'm in real estate in general. I just think that with inflation being a distinct possibility, and I'm not talking about inflation on the level that we're doing right now recently. I'm talking about worldwide, historically speaking, the effects of inflation are quite scary. So the way I've been saying it recently to keep it punchy is to say you can either learn to play the game or you can lose at it. So
it's like a casino.
In a lot of ways, yeah. So I was a CTO of a real estate firm with 9 figures under management. So I was going like, well, no matter what, I pretty much had to be made in the shade, right? But that's salary and wages. That's not accumulating wealth. That's not getting assets that cash flow and pay for your lifestyle without taking away from your initial capital or equity. So I think it's so important to have a really good investment plan that includes finding some hands-off revenue streams.
That's actually the biggest reason why I'm doing this more now, even when I'm punched in at work. What did you learn from your jobs that you held, that you applied to being an entrepreneur, that you can give us advice on?
All right, great. I love this question because my answer is terribly disconcerting. Okay, it's not going to make anybody happy at all. Entrepreneurship is by far the most complex thing you can decide to do. And the more jobs and more eclectic your experience is, the better it's going to be for you. So most of my job experience that seems like it will have no application whatsoever is among the most useful features or most useful skills in my skill set as an entrepreneur. A prime example would be, you'd think that teaching English would be a complete time suck and there'd be no benefit from that whatsoever. But teaching English means that I've learned how to get rid of the big words in my vocabulary at the right time. I've learned to explain things to people like they're 8 years old and have them get it and take away the fancy, niche buzzwords or whatever that just confuse people. So teaching English taught me to explain things more simply, but it also taught me how to proofread. It means that proofreading is very, very important. And like all these different jobs I've done, they've made a huge impact just because entrepreneurship is so multifaceted. I've encouraged people before to go through the different faculties of a university and at least get an idea of what each of them do, just so that you understand that. And I think entrepreneurship is very similar. You can do a similar approach to get your head around it by going, who's on a C-level board of directors, okay? And what do each of those people do? And then get to the point where you get it and you get how to do it. And then that is the key to becoming a better entrepreneur. And it's just scary how many of those traits you need to at least be passable at, or else your business is going to be looking into some real trouble.
Here's one of the things I learned from all those years in retail, between retailing and interning, which probably are the reason I want to pursue like what you're doing right now, which is entrepreneurship. One thing most people don't realize, whether it's a recruiter or a hiring manager, when they look at a resume, is retail actually has a lot of things you can look at that would gear you to entrepreneurship. You can see where, the older senior leaders are very outdated in how to pitch or sell a product or a service. I've seen this. They've tried multiple ways to reset a store. They think scrubby dubby clean is going to make a sale. It can up to a point. Nobody wants to walk into a dirty store, but if your entire focus is the presentation, you're going to, on some level, depending on what the retailer is, you're going to lose that sale. That's what I believe over the years, after working in different places like GNC, General Nutrition Corporation. I worked at Goodwill in clothing, where, everything is secondhand donated. I've done internships in nonprofit organizations, and I'll tell you, I have a gluttony of knowledge, which is bringing me to, to promoting and selling this now in a nutshell, meaning I'm able to think outside the box. Hence, you're right about one thing: entrepreneurship is a lot of work that not everyone is geared toward.
I want to back up about one thing, which is that, especially with a background in technology and whatnot, because I was in electrical engineering, a lot of electrical engineers in general, they have a pretty bad attitude towards Apple products. And the reason is because the actual hardware that's inside them, it's not as fast. So you're paying a lot for design and looks and things like that. So you were saying that people don't really care if if things are like organized inside the store quite so much, but that's definitely a personality thing. For some people, it's much more than others. And there's all sorts of things in our society that really reveal that fact. And I think Apple's a great example. People will pay almost double for a machine just because it's prettier looking. And the other thing too,
of course,
is like when it comes to things on the shelf, you'll notice people will avoid the front one of the products, so the front box or whatever, and they'll get the one behind it just because the corners aren't a little bit dog-eared or anything like that. And it really depends on the orientation of the person. So it's really a balancing act, and it's pretty tough. But there's no doubt that what you've noticed in retail as well, there's so much busy work going on. There's not something that clearly will move the needle as far as profitability goes, so they have to find other things, so they feel like, okay, well, we're justified in having 21 employees instead of just 20. That sort of thing is a lot of what I see, and it's a tough situation.
All right, so on the 30-day challenge, I got to learn a lot about you. What I was really curious about is what drew you to real estate.
Okay, great. So when I worked for OneShoppingCart.com, which is web.com, I got exposed to a lot of online businesses, and I love those because when I was teaching guitar as a teenager at the local music store, I got my feet wet as far as how retail works, and I realized, okay, well, overhead is a very real thing. It's very important, and you have to keep tabs on it, and online gets rid of a lot of overhead, which is pretty exciting. So I was helping these online businesses, and then eventually a real estate company ended up buying out all 40 hours of my week every week for my e-commerce agency. So part of it was going like, okay, so how is it that these real estate guys seem to have so much more money than people in other businesses? What exactly is it? So that's why I had to learn. And then once I found out that, if I'm going to be really blunt, I'd say part of it is an on paper game. Like I'm saying, real estate in general, it's an on paper game. So you get all these on paper millionaires, but they're still living off of like say 50K per year, just because all their assets are wrapped up, but and they can't really access them very often. So it's a pretty sticky thing. But if you're looking, if you want to keep the door open for retirement, then I think you do have to be involved in real estate.
I wouldn't disagree with that. And at this point in my life, that is something I'm looking to start doing as well, commercial and residential. And the next question would be how to get started if you're, say, under 40K USD. I don't know what that salary equates to in Canada because
sure, yeah. I work
diff-
completely in US and I'm good with numbers, so it's all good. But as far as tips for
All right, great.
investing, the one thing that you always have to be concerned about, lawyers always have all of their little disclaimers saying, like this doesn't work for everybody. And then with investments, that's similar too. So like on paper, I shouldn't be giving any advice at all, but I've got some advice that I definitely would think keeps me in the clear, which is the education piece is definitely the most important part. And I'm not necessarily saying that you should be spending a fortune on mentoring. There is a problem in real estate that I've been aware of since about 2013, so almost 10 years now, which is that there are people who will buy a book or two, they'll read it, and then they'll make a course because they know, oh, well, in order to make it in real estate, because I don't have the capital to buy the assets, I got to become a coach and sell a course and all this sort of stuff. And it's a pretty nasty little situation. It's actually
do you know what Elizabeth and I were talking about this? This is my issue with LinkedIn. That is what we call a guru.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying, create a course off reading a book, because obviously you really can't. And you're probably right. That would distinguish people. But because of the social media, unfortunately, the good and the bad is social media opens up for that. Which allows people to say after reading a book or two, now I'm going to create an investing course. You can't create a course if you're very inexperienced in knowledge of something. So I would completely agree with you, because honestly, I self-educate myself a lot. The education everyone thinks you really need is the paper education or the university education. That just gets you the job to help you learn.
It gets you an interview. It doesn't get you the job.
Exactly.
Yeah. I don't know if you want to get back to the under 40K thing, because there's also definitely a role for like you can use the 40K to support yourself while you're even volunteering for people. It's like there's no shortage of sharks in real estate. But at the end of the day, everybody's looking for people who are motivated and who will actually do the work. And time is on your side with real estate, where it's not on your side with wages and salary and whatnot. So if I were to get started with 40K or so, like the best advice is always don't quit your day job until you've really got it locked. But me personally, I'm always on the digital side of these things. So I help with capital raise, the physical, like the actual funnels, the capital raising website funnels. So the most important thing, and so funnels are often famous because of Russell Brunson's software called ClickFunnels. But when I was working for Web.com, we had an upsell feature called Upsell Express. My brother was actually involved in the architecture for it, and so that was like 3 years before ClickFunnels even started. So, but if you listen to Russell Brunson, he'll tell you that funnels are not complex. It really is just, when it comes to funnels, it's a matter of you're having a conversation, and a proper funnel treats the person like an actual person instead of like, hey, do what I tell you, which is kind of the format of a lot of people's posts and content in general. So what you need to do is you need to say, hey, you're a commercial real estate investor. So, and then just fill in the blanks, and that's your funnel. And then make sure that you're stringing a clear path where people understand why they're starting where they did and why they're ending up where they will. In other words, with a product or something like that. So a great example for me using a podcast is the chance encounters I use at dandoesdeals.com, which is where I say, hey, commercial real estate investors, you know how you have to spend 15 minutes with everybody to find out if they fit in your business? Well, I do too, because I'm a commercial real estate investor. So I do it in podcast format so that, my audience sees who you are. I get the chance to see if you fit into my business and vice versa. And then we can have a good reason to say, all right, we'll move on with our day, especially if we got nothing going on.
With rental properties, would you recommend buying multifamily real estate after seeing a return in commercial investing, or would you recommend the opposite?
Okay, so you always have to invest in things that you understand, and you really have to understand the risks that are involved. So I think what you're really pointing at then is, should you start off as a limited partner or a general partner? Okay, and a general partner means that you actually do work for the building to make it, in its day-to-day operations. Maybe you mow the lawns, or maybe you take out the trash, or maybe you do the books, or just whatever it is. Then you get to be a GP. But if you're an LP, you have no roles whatsoever to play in the operation. You're just contributing cash and getting cash back. So I've seen people do each of the different approaches. And one of the issues that you brought up earlier is like, what if you're starting with only 40K or something like that? It might be near impossible to get in for to an LP position with that amount of money. It might be impossible to get on the GP team with that amount of money. So you really have to work with what you've got right now. And also keep in mind that commercial is a label they give when it's 5 or more units. So,
oh yeah, of course.
So
like the big corporate the big corporate office buildings, the big corporate residential properties. Yeah, that's commercial.
Yeah. So right. And the word commercial, it has the word commerce in it, which means it's real estate for the purpose of making money, as opposed to residential is real estate for the purpose of living in. So that's also part of the reason why I stay out of houses, other than it being not as scalable. If you're going to be remote based like me. So I like multifamily because of that. But of course, there's still more options as well. It's not just apartment complexes. It could be mobile home parks. It can be short-term rentals. These are all different commercial.
Airbnb.
Yeah, Airbnb. Yep, exactly. That's one.
They say Airbnb is sometimes a good way to get started also, but that's when you have a residential home.
Well, the biggest thing, it's you have to be very careful to play the entire situation through in your head. Okay, like one of the things for an Airbnb is amenities. With all businesses, amenities are really, really great ways to make sure that you can get consistent business, right? And with an Airbnb, they like to have like a goodie bag when the person arrives the first day or something like that. So maybe it has like a bottle of wine and some, crackers and something like that. Just something to make them feel more welcome. And so if they ever visit again, they'll be sure to rent the same place, right? Those are the things that people end up doing to make them more inclined to make it work. And do you really want to be the one who's buying the bottle of wine every single time? Or do you want to outsource that to a company who's in charge, who automatically they know this is when they're checking in. So it's got to be clean, and you got to have that gift basket ready. So having those things clear in your head before you get started, that's what I'd emphasize.
how would you best advise my audience to build their personal brand, or which is now, the popular buzzword, but what it's really, you and I both know, even though we're older and we're speaking to people who are within our age range and older, really all the personal brand really is just basically, hi, I'm here online, this is what I have to sell. I know this is blunt and to the point, where a lot of people are going to, go around labeling it a personal brand, but this is what it really is.
Yeah. So I'm the biggest fan there is of personal branding, and I'm not sure if everybody I tell this to gets the significance, but if you look in the 1990s, if you have ways to check on what was on the internet, you'll find my websites related to guitar and my instructional guitar video and stuff like that.
I'm going to go back and Google you just to see that stuff.
Yeah. It's you have to know how to find the archive stuff. But from 2000 to 2010, it's crickets, okay, because of digital security reasons. I knew.
Oh
that.
My God, that was the funny thing, because I was just finishing high school in mid 2004, and speaking of that, first social media, I didn't even want to get on Facebook. Somebody on MySpace, somebody made it for me, and then I was on that. 2008, you could finally, without a registered college email, go on Facebook. That's how crazy technology has taken off over the last decade.
Oh yeah, definitely. So,
and we were at the very beginning, where we've been able to adjust along the way, but we've also got lost, in translation in some degrees. If you remember that movie with Bill Murray, it was kind of it was forewarning about this, that there was going to be a generation of kids who were going to get lost in, the buildup.
yeah, it's it's so complex, and I think personal branding is a big part. But the reason why I emphasize personal branding is the unfortunate truth that nobody will buy from you unless they know who you are. And it doesn't even matter, I say buy from, but it's even as far as your career goes. It doesn't matter if you want to be an entrepreneur or not. You are making the biggest mistake possible by not having a personal brand. Okay. It's people need to know who you are, so that when they're looking to hire one of you, whatever you are, you're the one who they think of. I like to say on my LinkedIn profile, I say I'm a commercial investor in physical, digital, and mental real estate. And when I say mental real estate, I'm saying taking up space in people's heads. So you're the first name that they think of. So it's so important to do the personal brand. I would say be careful about being too controversial, though, but that's also my forte, is walking the line and finding out this is too controversial. You will get canceled, and then I do exactly the thing that should get you canceled without getting canceled.
There needs to be a way. We need to, one big thing the team and I are discussing is, how do we present topics on LinkedIn that I know could be talked about or should be talked about. And now my brand going forward, which I've already gotten 3 or 4 parents reaching out to me, was about, autism. I actually had them reach out to me asking me for advice, and I went back to my childhood and gave them some advice on what I thought would be good for their kids based off my experiences. And, it was because of that 30-day challenge that, now I have at least a little more, presence. Now that I'm launching the podcast and this segment, I think this will start to work more to my advantage, where more like those 3 parents will come to me the way they did in message. It got to this point, but I also have to sift through a bunch of people that I don't really want to have, not that I don't want to have connections with, but I'm like, I'd rather you not come to my DM. I'd rather you look at my content first, and then if you're going to come to me in DM, discuss the content. I'm not here on LinkedIn to, what's the word I'm looking for?
Be pitched all day.
Not just pitched all day. LinkedIn is for creating friendships in a different way, in the sense of business. If you're looking for personal friendships, there's other platforms for that.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think there's only so much time you can have. One of the best tricks on LinkedIn for that though is to turn on creator mode, and then that way by default, the button that pops up when they hover over your face is a follow button rather than a connect button, and you can follow. If you follow, you have to use LinkedIn Mail to message people in their
LinkedIn
DMs.
InMail, yeah, I've noticed that with some people. It's smart though because it avoids all these annoying connection requests.
Right, right. But if you connect, then you're kind of stuck. You know, they can go ahead and DM you, and part of that is just vetting your contact list. And that's one thing is like I see so many people that are proud to basically. I'll put my finger on it, especially because like I lived on the other side of the world for so long. But part of it is a race thing where people are like, nope, got to give everybody a chance. I don't care who you are. If you send a connection request, I'm going to accept. But I personally am not a believer in that approach, just because I think that you're just asking to have more people who are unscrupulous connect to you.
Before we stop the record and finish this up today, number one, thank you for coming on to pick your brains today. This is much appreciated. Your advice on how to present topics was actually very super helpful today because that's something we talk about every week. We know even on YouTube you can get canceled if you don't play by the algorithm rules. Mm-hmm. I'm very appreciative that you took the time to do this today.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I encourage other people to do the same. The fact is, it's you might as well just make a little bit of time. Like my interviews, they tend to be very short. Like with commercial real estate investors on dandoesdeals.com, they're always 15 minutes. For who are you helping, they're usually about 8 minutes. And that is just to go as like, okay, I want to do what I can for you, even if there's no real business opportunity. So I think people should be a little bit less guarded and
some of these creators need to stop looking at helping someone as a business transaction. They want more people posting on LinkedIn. Even if you can't necessarily help me the way you would prefer to help me, which is for the monetary, part of it, you could still appear on an interview with me to the audience, and the audience could get to know you, because this was very kind and respectful of you since we were on a challenge.
Seeing, like, I think that part of your appeal is it's pretty obvious that what you see is what you get. Okay, like I think with a person like me, that's not so obvious. I think a lot of people look at what I've put out and they're saying, okay, so who is Dan Fredenberg really, really, really? And it's like, well, it's all of this for sure. And yes, I might have indirect motivations that you're not aware of. None of them are to cause any harm or take advantage of anybody, but it's tough to say. But at least with you, I know that you're not sitting there going like, okay, I'm having this person on because that person's going to introduce me to that person's going to introduce me to the other person, then I'm going to have the interview that I actually want, or something like that. People wouldn't
No, this wasn't my intention at all. Yeah. My intention is to basically start to become more visible, create a digital product that will, do so many things for me. If somebody comes on and agrees to do this with me, I'm just grateful to have that person. I'm not trying to, leverage to a bigger person. If the bigger person wants to come on, I will be more than grateful for them just coming on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. That's exactly what I do as well. I make sure that, like if you're providing a service, you're giving awareness to people. I definitely think some people will really want to follow what you do. So this is a really exciting project.
Thank you. And I'm glad that you came on today. I hope you guys definitely all learned something today. Comment, click, subscribe.